Chinaza is just a dress. You don't need nice things.
My name is Chinaza and this is my story. My father was barely home. He worked in the city, leaving me and my stepmother, Mrs. Udoka. He comes home once in a long time to check up on us. Though he sends money from time to time, trusting that she took care of me, but she didn't. She kept most of it, buying herself expensive clothes and jewelries with nice food. Meanwhile, I wore rags. My school uniform had holes. My shoes were falling apart, but Udoka didn't care. "You are fine," she would say, as she paraded around the house in her new expensive clothes and hairs. One evening, when my father was home for the weekend, I finally built up the courage to tell him. I waited for Udoka to leave the room and I whispered, "Papa, she is not who you think she is. She is very cruel to me." But his face was tightened. He didn't say anything to me at first. Then shaking his head, he signed,
Chinaza, you must learn to love your stepmother. She takes good care of you and the house. We must be a big happy family.
Udoka was clever. When my father is home, she played the perfect wife, smiling and was kind. She even gave me gifts, the ones she bought just before he arrived, to make me look beautiful. He couldn't see through her. Once he went back to the city, Udoka's cruelty got worse. She began sending me on long errands that took me deep into the forest to get woods that she wasn't using for anything. We had everything we wanted in the house. We had gas, or far across the town with no transportation fare. Errands that made me late for school. If I complained, she would lock me out of the house when I returned and starved me. One night, after making me fetch water in the rain, she left me outside till morning. My wet clothes sticking to my skin, my temperature was high and my body was shaking. I tried telling the neighbors, but no one wanted to get involved. They feared Udoka and her sharp tongue. She had her ways of twisting words and making people believe her own side of the story. How can I forget to mention, Udoka was good with lies. Then one day, she sent me into the deep forest to fetch firewood. The sky was dark by the time I had finished. The wind was blowing hard. My heart raced as shadows seemed to be around me. I started to move back quietly. Then I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, but there was nothing. The hairs on my body stood. I walked faster. The footsteps quickened. Panic flooded my chest as I broke into a run. I could feel somebody following me, but I didn't dare to look back. When I finally busted out of the forest, panting and sweating, I got to the house and I saw the door locked again. Udoka's voice came from inside. "Sleep outside tonight if you survive it." At that moment, I realized it was all a setup. Udoka wanted me out of the house and out of her life. I spent the next few days in silence. I knew I couldn't stay. I began gathering few money I had hidden over the years. The one I found, earned, or even stolen from Udoka when she wasn't looking. Then one night, I overheard her talking with her friends. They were laughing and I froze when I heard my name.
She won't last much longer. Before the time her father comes back next, she will be gone for good.
My blood ran cold. She wasn't just making my life miserable. She was planning something else. Something that would literally mean the end of me. I took all the money I can find and I fled into the dark. I had no real plans. I was desperate and I needed to escape. The city seemed like the only place big enough to hide from Udoka. The city was busy. It overwhelmed me. People moving about their life. I thought I had found freedom, a fresh start. But life in the city wasn't the escape I had imagined. It wasn't as easy as people made it. I was soon out of money with no food or shelter. It didn't take long before I found myself sitting by the roadside, starving and begging for food. I was dealt with in the streets, beaten, tempered by men. And that was when I met a man called Uchenna. He seemed like a gentleman, kind, and approached me with a gentle smile. One fateful day, Uchenna brought me food, and I ate like I hadn't eaten in months. He even offered me a place to stay. In his words, "You will be safe with me." Desperate and exhausted, I immediately accepted, not knowing I was about to make the biggest mistake of my life. The first few months, Uchenna treated me so well, better than anyone had ever treated me. He bought me clothes. He let me sleep in his house and even introduced me to his family. Soon, he asked for my hand in marriage, and I, believing I have found someone who really cared, I agreed with excitement. But then things quickly changed after the wedding. Uchenna changed. He wanted obedience, silence, and control over my life. He forbade me from leaving the house without his permission, and if I disobeyed, his punishments were cruel. I was ready to surrender. I was ready to be a good wife, but he became abusive. A slap for speaking my mind, beating for being late with dinner. My life is ruined, I said, but I stayed strong. I was trapped again, and this time, there is no way out. But the worst was yet to come. One night, I overheard Uchenna on the phone. His voice low and mean.
I have her here. By the time I am done with her, she would be just like the others.
I was shocked. I didn't understand what he meant by the others. The others? I knew I had to escape again. I waited patiently for the right moment, knowing one wrong move could be the end of me. Uchenna was smart, always suspicious and watching. But unlike Udoka, he had one weakness. His own arrogance. He underestimated me, thought I was too scared, too weak and too broken to fight back. But he didn't know the worst was coming. One evening, Uchenna came home late, drunk. He tossed his key to the table and slumped into the couch, quietly watched from the kitchen. This was the moment I had been waiting for. He wouldn't be as sharp tonight. I went straight into the room and searched everywhere. I finally found them locked in the drawer. Transactions, name, all manner of evidence I needed. He trafficked girls for prostitution and harvested the organs of the one he thought was useless to him. I froze in shock, but then what would I do? I'd have to survive, so I pretended that I did not see anything. One fateful night, I added a pill into his drink, so he would sleep off. While he slept and snored loudly, I slipped into his room. My mind was racing as I grabbed the papers, stuffing them into my bag. I knew I didn't have much time before he woke up, so I moved quickly. I took his gun, loaded it and put it into my waistband. My heart pounded in my chest as I slowly walked towards the door. But just as I reached for the handle of the door, I heard his voice behind me.
Where do you think you are going to, Chinaza?
Jesus, I froze. My throat went dry. I turned around facing him. He was standing, his eyes filled with rage. The gun felt heavy at that point, but I didn't reach for it yet. Instead, I did something unexpected. I smiled. I am leaving, I said, my voice steady. And if you try to stop me, everyone would know what you have been hiding. His face twisted in confusion.
What are you talking about?
I held up one of the papers. All of this, I have made copies and I have sent them out to a trusted source, Uchenna. If anything happens to me, it's over for you. I will send this to the police and everyone who has a reason to come after you. For a moment, he stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. He was calculating, trying to figure out if I was bluffing, but I wasn't. I saw the fear in his eyes. That was when I knew I had won. You are lying, Chinaza, he said, taking a step towards me. You don't have the guts? I reached for the gun immediately and pointed it at him. Try me. He stopped. He lowered his head and his shoulders dropped in defeat. Get out, he said, his voice slow. If I ever see you again, you won't be so lucky. I didn't wait for him to change his mind. I backed out immediately, never lowering the gun until I was outside and running. I drove like I was crazy. I didn't stop until I was far enough from the house. I went straight to the police with the document, and it wasn't long before Uchenna's word came crashing. He was arrested and everything he built crumbled in a twinkle of an eye. I went straight to my home with anger and the rage in me. Luckily, my father was home. He was shocked to see me. He asked Udoka, I thought you said Chinaza was dead and buried, eh? So you lied to me. My blood was boiling. At that point, I exposed all of Udoka's maltreatment towards me. She was casted out by the community, and my father quickly called the police to arrest her. Udoka was gone for good. My father fell on his knees immediately, begging me to forgive him. But I forgave him. Besides, he never knew better. The next day, I drove to a new city, leaving everything behind. For the first time in my life, I was free. The road ahead was uncertain, but I had survived. And now I was finally in control of my life and my own story. Thank you for watching. For more interesting videos like this, like, comment, follow, and subscribe. Thank you.